All right, welcome everyone to our next class in our Age Well workshop series. I'm Deanna Jones, the director for the Thompson Senior Center, and it's a privilege to be here and offering this workshop only virtually this time, just because of the present conditions and safety in our community. But this is being recorded for future sharing as well. So today's workshop is about making your home safe and ready to house you as you age in place where you are. So our very first panelist is going to be Linda Bowden from the AARP Home Fit program. Then we'll have Linda Harvey and Stephanie from the Ottawa-Quechee Health Center Physical Therapy Department, Misha McNabb from our own Woodstock Emergency Services, Bill Newcomb from Cover in White River Junction, and Beth Robinson from the Ottawa-Quechee Health Foundation. So thank you all so very much for being here for this important topic. And I'm going to turn it right over to Linda. Bowden.
Great. Thank you very much. It's actually Bowden, but that's fine. I'm the AARP Vermont Volunteer State President. And today I'll be talking with you about how to make your home fit. And one way to make a home more livable for people is of all ages is to incorporate design principles and products that are adaptable, they're safe, and they're easy to use. And there are many smartly designed features out there that are attractive, stylish, and come at all price points. So this AARP Home Fit workshop will show you how that might be possible. Next slide. So AARP created this workshop because they're committed to helping you make a home comfortable, safe, and a great fit for older adults and people of all ages. So today, what we're going to do briefly is talk about the perks of making your home fit, about universal design, and then we'll take a home tour really quickly of how to make your home fit. So in today's workshop, you'll recognize how your home can be modified to support changing needs and lifestyle changes, determine which modifications are important for maintaining your lifestyle, and distinguish between modifications that are DIY and those best for left to a professional. Next slide. So what is the cost of not staying in your home? A private duty home health aid costs about $4,380 a month. Adult daycare outside the house is around $1,600 a month. Assisted living facility costs are around $4,000 a month, and nursing home semi-private rooms will run you around $8,000 a month. So if you can stay in your home, why not do that? Next slide. Now, this is a little bit about universal design, and universal design is an approach to designing products and environments to accommodate all people, including those with physical, cognitive, or sensory impairments. It, along with livability and visitability, are the basis for the Home Fit Guide, which Deanna has at the Thompson Senior Center, and which you can get online if you'd like. So let's talk a little bit more about universal design. Next slide. So I saw on VPR, or I heard, and then I went and looked it up. There was an educator at UVM in special ed, and he came up with this cartoon of something that actually happened and presented it. So a young man came up in his wheelchair and asked the gentleman who was shoveling the walk, "Could you please shovel the ramp?" And the gentleman said, "All of the other kids are waiting to use the stairs. When I get through shoveling them off, then I'll clear the ramp for you." And the child said, "But if you shovel the ramp, we can all get in." This is an example of universal design. Next slide. So the exterior of your house is the most important thing. How you get in with a zero-step entrance is really the goal that you have as you age in place. Now, this could be anywhere. It could be the back door, the front door. It could be a side door, garage door. Modifications need to be made, and they can be made under a number of different circumstances that we're going to talk about. But the ultimate goal is safety and practicality. Okay, next slide. So these are some alternative steps. You may not have seen these before. They're called walker steps, and they are modified to be a little bit longer, 22 inches deep and 4 inches high. And they're alternatives to ramp because you can actually affix your walker to them. You also know that the railing goes all the way down to the sidewalk. So these are some alternatives. Next slide. Here are some examples of ramps. There's a permanent ramp there for your own home. Again, it can be placed anywhere. A temporary ramp if you're renting a place or you're just staying for 6 months out of the year, whatever that may be. And there's also a threshold ramp, and that's when the distance up is no more than 3/4 of an inch. So there will be more information coming about ramps in the later program. Next slide. Another alternative is to have a vertical platform lift. And I believe Deanna has a unit similar to this at the senior center that you could take a look at. It's ideal for limited space. It could be in the garage or any place. Most of them are weatherproof and also no power proof. So you don't have to worry about things freezing up for you. But of course, they must be installed by a professional. Next slide. The front door is the key for those delivery people or the first responders or your pizza delivery. It's important to think about the different features you have. First off, make sure that your lights, if you have to replace a light bulb, you could reach it by just not having to stand on a stool or a ladder. So something you can do yourself. I love this bench because you could sit on it, you could put your groceries on it, take off your boots, find your keys. So something else to think about you might want to incorporate. You notice the door handle there, you can use your elbow for that. And I'll mention I had broken my wrist a few months ago, and having something like that is essential. Now there are different kinds of techniques for opening doors, and we'll get into that in the next slide. But tips for displaying address numbers, think about maybe your numbers being very shiny, reflective, glow-in-the-dark materials, and those things most visible at night, including perhaps solar-powered pathway lights. Next slide. So if you don't have a peephole, or you might have a window there, but either way, it's nice to be able to see who is ringing your doorbell. And a smart home option might be something you can use with your smartphone, as are digital door locks along there. Again, there's that lever-styled handle. Okay, next slide. So this is one of my favorite hinges, which sounds really funny, but what's really unique about this hinge is that it opens up completely. Now, door frames need to be at the width of 32 inches for walkers and for wheelchairs, and 80 inches high for height, so 32 inches by 80. Now, if your door is just an inch shy in opening, so say it's 33 instead of 32, or the other way around, what you can have is this swing clear hinge that opens directly up and you can get in the doorway. So it's really an asset if you are tight just by a short bit. Next slide. This is an example of entryways if you don't have a hall closet. How simple can that be? Where you have a bench, you have a bin for boots, you could put your keys up on hooks, you can have hooks for your coat or your car keys or your garage door openers, those sorts of things. So many different sorts of things that you can modify your own home. Next slide. We're getting into the kitchen now. Now, lots of times people want to renovate their kitchens, and it's important to try that sort of technique for different things before you have someone come in and make those renovations for you. So here you see different kinds of heights for counters. Considering if you're in a wheelchair, you might want a lower counter. You could try a card table if that's the case. Next slide. Another thing to consider is adjustable lighting, and that can easily, you could go to the big box stores and get those for mounting underneath your counters so that you have more light there. Lower level cabinetry with the pull-out shelves, open shelves for visibility, depending on how you design your kitchen, and also drawers. I know when my brother-in-law had his stroke, he was able with the bottom drawers to be able to get to those pots and pans rather than having to reach up. Next slide. And here's an example of one of those faucets that's a sensory touch. They have one of those in their house, and he can easily get to the dish to do dishes, which my sister is very happy about. When my wrist was broken, I could use just 2 fingers of my right hand to open and shut the drawers. So those D-shaped handles are really great. Next slide. Love this. This is the appliance. They come in many different types and expenses. I wish we had gotten one of those refrigerator freezers where it has the freezer section on the bottom, because my husband sees nothing below his waist. Ours is up above, but there was a cost associated with it, just couldn't handle. But side by side is really great with the freezer below if you can do it. Having knobs in front for the stove is a great idea. If you have grandkids or children living with you, they have lights or locks that you can also incorporate so that they don't mess with them. Over to the right, you see a dishwasher with different load levels. So a small load, which is a great asset. And it's pointing to the microwave on the counter, because in the former 70s, they used to put microwaves above the stove, which is a horrible idea, because as you're taking hot liquids out, there's a potential for burn. So you need to think about that when you're designing your kitchen. Next slide. Now, don't forget that your dining room can be used as an office. It can be a bedroom. It can be an extension of whatever you'd like it to be, an exercise space. So the rooms in your house don't necessarily have to be what it was originally designed for. Again, safety and convenience is the key in designing your home. Next slide. There's some cautionary things here in the living room, another space you need to be careful of. Here you see that there is a device that holds those cables down, those electrical cables, so you're not going to trip on them. Ways for the carpeting to be secured. And of course, bookcases need to be secured to the wall. So in the guide that accompanies this, there's even more tips than that associated with these different rooms that we're going through quite quickly. Next slide. Rocker panel lighting is great. You can use your elbow for this. They also have night lights associated with it, glow in the dark. So many different tips, many different products. Usually your light switches are put 3 to 4 feet from the floor. So something else to consider. Next slide. Here we're going into the bathroom, another high risk area. There's some low cost options if you don't have a comfort height toilet, which is the higher version of a toilet where your knees come to parallel with the floor. Here you could put it right over the toilet. Also in the shower, you see the wand. That's great for grandkids. It's great for dogs. Or other pets that you need to bathe in addition to yourself. If you want to have a toilet base riser that raises the toilet 3.5 inches, which is what it would be for comfort height, you can put a riser in, and that costs about $100, but less than the cost of a new toilet. and then a transfer bench if you want to keep the tub that you have. Next slide. So here we have different kinds of grab and assist bars, and this is another thing that they have at the Thompson Senior Center that you can experience and see on your own. If you're not putting those in right away, make sure that you have supportive blocks put in because they need to go right in the foundation. You do not want to have those stick-on grab bars. That's essential that you don't use that. They're not safe and could be very dangerous in those situations. Next slide. So finally, this is the laundry room. As you see, it's appropriate for wheelchair height. You could put this in your garage if it's heated. You can also use different other techniques. Typically, you want to have your washer and dryer in a place where you take off your clothes and put them on. But you see other techniques for moving those clothes around in a cart, or you could put things up to dry. The shelving underneath is for those things that might, like laundry detergent or bleach or whatever you might have with regards to that. There are also washer dryer combinations out there and other techniques for mounting washers and dryers. Next slide. I guess there was one more. You need to make sure your hallway has at least 36 inches. That's for walkers and wheelchairs. Make sure the railing comes all the way to the bottom stairs. Think about motion sensor night lights in those kinds of areas before you get to a light switch. That's a key thing. Treads, runners, and riser covers, things that have alternative patterns can be another idea for you along those lines. Next slide. And stair lifts. If you prefer to be on the second floor versus the main floor, there are other alternatives for helping you get up the stairs. Next slide. Here are the resources. So if you want to jot some of these down, or I'll put them in the chat, you can go there to find out more about livable programs and other kinds of layouts that you might have for your home. The Home Fit Guide is there, and different resources for OTs as well as certified aging in place specialists. Next slide. And here's a picture of that home guide. And the last slide has my contact information. So thank you so much for inviting me today, Deanna. It's been a pleasure, and I'll take questions at the end with the rest of the group.
Linda, that was impressive to go through all that information, and I know you really narrowed it down to begin with for us to fit in, so thank you very much. As she said during the presentation, there are some items that she showed, specifically the medical equipment in the bathroom, and sometimes stair chair lifts or even hospital beds that you can reach out to the Thompson Senior Center, to our Aging at Home coordinator, Shari, and she can connect you with gently used items for free a lot of times. So thank you. And I'm going to move right along here to Linda, Harvey, and Stephanie.
Okay, here we are. My name is Linda Harvey, and this is Stephanie, who were both physical therapists at the Ottaquiti Health Center in Woodstock Physical Therapy. And I have been involved in the Woodstock community for a few years doing fall prevention screenings in the fall and sometimes in the spring. And I think that we will definitely try to do one in the spring this year. Mm-hmm. So we're going to talk about some of the physical attributes that may influence whether you're at risk for falls. So next slide. What could I get? Okay, and that is had our names. Okay, you can move on to the next slide. Okay, great. And again. Okay, and we'll have questions at the end with the rest of the panel. Next slide. Okay, good. And so what I'm going to talk a little bit is about falls. And what balance is. It's what we strive for. And oftentimes we don't know our balance is bad until we start losing elements of it. Aging affects balance and how physical activity affects balance. And I'll be talking about the STEADY a little bit, which is from the CDC. And it was an organization that was set up in 2012 with doctors and physical therapists and other health professionals looking at a way to be able to decrease the risk of falls of people within the community. All right. And I think we would all agree that falls are bad. Again, more than 37% of adults 65 or older fall in the United States. The most recent statistic I had from the state of Vermont was 1 out of 3 people over 65 fall every year, and that 3 million people 65 and older were treated in emergency departments for non-fatal injuries. I have the statistics from 2010 to 2014 for Vermont, and it's 10,000 older adults were hospitalized after falls, and 100,000 went to the emergency department. Of all of the falls that happen within the state of Vermont, less than half are reported to doctors. So we only have, oh, and I can take off my mask. Thank goodness, sorry, I forgot. That we also are going to talk about the importance of reporting if you do fall. Okay, next slide, please. So there's a fear of falling. So if you have fallen, you are more likely to have a repeated fall. And when someone falls, they often have a fear of falling. And with that comes this inactivity. And so because of having the fear of falling and having less physical activity can bring upon weakening of muscles. And then that gives them increased risk of falls. And I have to also say that living in Vermont, the weather does not help us in this having a cycle of losing strength because of inactivity. Because one of the ways that people prevent falling is staying off the ice. And oftentimes that's a hazard. So we'll talk about the impact of the fear of falling physically. So balance is a very complicated thing. This is a diagram that was made by a neuropsychologist in France. And the most important thing is to look at the 2 top categories of postural control and movement control, and just seeing how balance and orientation and different body parts are all linked into balance. That's all I'm going to say about that complicated picture. So I want you to think about what we're talking about is a balance toolbox. And so what are the tools that we have for moving, and what are the tools that we have for sensation? Okay, next slide. Okay, so the tools for moving are joints and muscles. And so if you think about your skeletal system, that's the joints that provide movement, and the muscles are attached to the bones. So both of those systems work. In the joints, the more flexibility you have, the more ease you have in movement, and the stronger your muscles are, the more that they can respond to the environment. Okay, and then these are the systems that also affect balance. So there's the motor component that we just talked a little bit about, and then there's the visual sense of looking at the environment, the vestibular system, which acts more like a gyroscope and connects the reflexes in the eyes. And then there's the postural muscles and the sensation through your skin, and even all of our joints have receptors that give us an idea of where we are in space. So those systems also interact with the motor control and strength. So when we think about the nervous system, we want to think about how we sense. So I like the example of when you touch something that's hot and you get that sensation in your hand, you know to pull it away, and the muscles work with that. So it's a little bit of coordinating both of those systems. Proprioception is also connected to the nervous system, and the circulatory system is important. That gives the energy to all of those parts in our brain, in our muscles, in the nerves and eyes. So think of the circulatory as what's fueling the system. And I did say it was complicated. The other thing is that the connection with the brain, it's the posture of trying to stay upright and how we move in space and what our posture is. Okay, so next slide. So when we look at when people lose their balance, there are some factors that we have control over and some that we don't. Age is one of the things we do not have control over. We age, and as we age, it's not unusual to get stiffness and pain within a joint. And so the more that you can be active and keep moving may help to decrease that pain and stiffness. That being said, people also get injuries, and when you have an injury, you lose some mobility within the joints and because of pain. So I have to be optimistic and let you know that as you age, and if you have pain and stiffness, that those things can be improved. Okay, next slide. So one joint problem that is very prevalent within the elderly population is arthritis, which is a wearing and tear. And a lot of the things that happen to us as we get older is based on how we've moved all of our life, what our jobs have been, what positions that we've been in. And so when you do get pain, it's not unlike that cycle of falling, the fear of falling, that pain stops you from moving and a lack of movement causes pain. So thinking of the joints with arthritis and keeping joints healthy is movement really does help to lubricate those joints. Okay, next slide. So how did I lose my balance? Then we can think about what happens in aging with muscle fibers. So the top slide is a 21-year-old. So that's a cross section of a muscle. And you can see the difference of the muscle, and on the one that's underneath, I can't remember that age. I think it's 63. 63. So again, there's going to be more buildup of fat, less bulk of the muscle. So the muscle fiber size is what shrinks. And with that, there's also decrease in the circulation and the metabolism of that. One of the things that we know is you can improve your strength throughout the decades. And so we cannot improve the number of fibers after a certain age, but we can always increase the mass and strength of each of those individual fibers. So when we think about what attributes muscles have, they have strength, which is, I always say, thinking about strength being how much can you lift one time? What's the heaviest amount of weight that you can lift? So that would be a measurement of your strength. Power is the acting of over time, and endurance is how much you can actually, how long you can do an activity. And knowing that there's different types of muscles for each of those components of strength. Okay, next slide. So the once thought inevitable decline of the muscle's metabolic and force-producing capacities is no longer considered as an inevitable consequence of the aging process. So some of you may remember Jack LaLanne, and there's a picture of him in his, I think that's in his 70s, and his wife at 84. I think that the story was that when he turned 70, he pulled 70 people within a car. So he is an example who really kept in the 70s, really showing the benefit of aging and exercising throughout that time. Okay, next slide. So as we age, and the other things that we lose some physical attribute is of our cardiac output and decreased blood flow to muscles and nerves. And so again, physical activity can help us to increase that output. The red blood cells is what supplies the energy to the muscles and will allow us to be able to do more. So as we exercise, that we can maintain and improve our cardiac status. And aging, one of the other things that can happen is that that we can decrease our reaction time and have a more difficulty with that coordination between the senses. Again, so thinking about those senses that help us with our balance, the vision, the vestibular system, and also the proprioception. So when we're looking at what we can do, we want to have those activities that work on our balance of looking at the control and coordination and increasing our reaction time. Okay, next slide. Okay, and so that's where we say move it, don't lose it. So these are good examples of looking at activities that we as physical therapists would encourage people to do. So when we're looking at how we help as physical therapists, the flexibility part is that range of motion of the joints. And then the strengthening part is what we can do to actually build the muscle strength, whether it's repeating an exercise program, using weights and resistance. And then the balance and coordination is getting those things to work together. Okay. And so I talked a little bit about the study and which was started in 2012, and looking at where older adults can live stronger, healthier life. And as it's set up right now is every year Medicare encourages a wellness visit with a physician, and the physician are always using some of the tools that were designed within that. And I think we can move to the next slide. So this is one of the ways that we look at helping people determine what their risk for falls are. And so the 3 questions that are asked at these wellness visits are, have you fallen in the last year? Do you feel unsteady walking? And do you have a fear of falling? And if you answer yes to any of those questions, then that is an indication that you could possibly benefit from physical therapy. We are often at the forefront of when somebody gets injured and has fallen, then they come to see us, but there's also some support and activity looking at, can we do something to prevent that? And so understanding of some of the risk factors that there are, such as with this questionnaire will show you. And I think we have some of those at the top.
We send this along to with this group.
Yeah, okay, great. And so because the other things that we look at are the medications, and also if there's any trouble with incontinence, those are the things that can cause some difficulty with putting you more at risk for falling. Okay, and then next slide. So the things that we are going to try to encourage is to try to exercise to improve your balance and strength, to have your health provider review your medications, have your vision checked, and make your home safer. And so many of those things will be discussed in the panel. The one thing that I was going to just say, that the community has so many classes that are geared for helping people with their balance. It's one thing to come to a physical therapist, and then what we like to do is encourage you to do those things that are more evidence-based. Tai Chi is one. The Matter of Balance is another program. The Bone Builders are often places where people within our community will seek to get that benefit of both the flexibility and the strengthening and the coordination that helps with the balance. Okay, next slide. Okay, and then again, I'm not going to skip through this, but this is one part that the medication review with the physicians is really helpful. And I think the pharmacist now has become a really big part of the team, especially within the healthcare community. If you have multiple problems, that then there's the pharmacy is the person that can review your medications in between any of those doctor's visits. Okay, next slide. Okay, and then again, just that having that visual examination every year, because cataracts can affect vision and they can be removed, and that will help. But any changes can also impact your dizziness. Okay. And then you've gotten some information about making your home safer. Okay, and I think what to do when you fall, I'm not going to go in through that because Misha is going to be able to go through that. And I think that if you wanted to just say what we had for handouts.
So a couple of our handouts include the fall risk assessment. So fill that out. If you get 4 or more answer yes, then you might want to talk to your doctor about getting a referral to physical therapy or speaking with your doctor more about how to keep yourself safe at home. And we also gave out a handout on reducing falls during COVID. So a lot of it covers what we've talked about, but the biggest thing is finding ways to be active in your home in a way that keeps you safe, but also active. So it talks a lot about you can walk at home, you can do your own Tai Chi, you can even do something simple like sit to stand. So using your hands on a chair and standing up from your chair and sitting back down. You want to do it in the most challenging but safest way. If you're not sure how to challenge yourself to stay active, reach out to your doctor for a referral to physical therapy. We can help get you on the right track to prevent falls rather than just react to them. And that would be the next slide. Yeah.
Okay, great. So we can agree that falls are bad and balance is complicated, and just staying independent, preventing falls is looking at the risk factors, and hopefully we will see you at a screening that will help to see by testing those elements. Okay, great. Stay active, stay steady. Thank you. And that's our contact information.
Yeah, I'm at the Mount Escutney Hospital as well, so you can contact us there or at the Ottaquiche Health Center to see if you need any help with your balance or if you have any questions for us.
Great. Thank you both so much for all of that information. And we also appreciate your all of the programs you've done for us in person at the Thompson too, and look forward to when we can do it again in person. And the handouts that they've mentioned went out to everyone who registered, but you can always get a copy at the Thompson whenever you're watching this.
You can also go to the CDC's website and look up STEADI, S-T-E-A-D-I, and I'll put a link in the chat.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, great, thanks.
All right, so next we will turn it over to Misha and let her talk about the EMS perspective.
Hi, my name is Misha McNabb, and I am the EMS Division Director with Woodstock Fire and EMS. I'm glad y'all are all here. Prevention saves more lives than reactions when you have an emergency. So first I want to talk a little bit about what happens when you have an emergency. People are scared, tensions are high. It's an overwhelming situation. It's unexpected, unpredicted. That's why it's an emergency, especially when you fall. People don't know what to do. So if you can't get up by yourself, or you think that you have an injury, or something doesn't feel right, call 911. If you don't have a phone nearby, you can have a family member call 911. If that's not an option either, hopefully another resource if you live alone and you're aging. There's life alert buttons that you can wear. Most smartphones and smartwatches have a fall detection system within them. But we are also hoping, you have your cell phone or some way to reach out to call for help if needed. So that's something you want to keep in mind. Call 911 immediately if you can't get up by yourself, or if you think you're hurt. The longer you wait, the more your risk of injury or illness increases, and we want to prevent that. So we show up, we do an assessment. Sometimes, most times, people just need help getting up, and that's okay. Just because you reach out for help, it doesn't automatically mean we're going to come, we're going to transport you, we're going to take you out of your home. All these things are going to happen. Most of the time that doesn't happen. Most of the time people are uninjured and they just need help getting up. There's only a charge if we transport you to the hospital. So call us immediately. We are more than happy to come out and give you a hand. That's totally okay. Or to just check you out. The desire or the choice to transport to the hospital is ultimately yours, or your family members. We leave that in your hands after we get there. So some things you can do to prevent falling, as discussed earlier, reduce the clutter. Keep your walkways and your driveways sanded, salted, shoveled, or have somebody do that for you. Take a look at your home or your living arrangement modifications, if possible. Living in a one-level home is optimal, but that's okay because we have ways to mitigate that challenge as well. Throw rugs and tripped hazards. This is Vermont. It's chilly in the winter, and so a lot of people do have throw rugs, but that is a #1 trip hazard. So just be aware of that. If you have that in your home, make sure they're secure to reduce your hazards of tripping. Proper fitting footwear. We don't often think about this. We want the warm, fuzzy slippers to keep our toes warm. And they're usually a little too big, or they don't fit properly for whatever reason. So make sure you have proper fitting footwear as well. It's just another thing to keep in mind. Let's see, next slide. So there's lots of resources available, as you've just heard about. They're considered on an individual needs basis, but it's always better to reach out for help or for guidance before you have an emergency. Prevention has saved a lot more lives rather than reactions. But in the case that you do have an emergency or you're at a higher risk, we do have a falls prevention team in the area, and it's available through the Woodstock Area Mobile Integrated Health Care Team. I do have partners within the community health partners that I collaborate with, and we share resources. And this sort of gets you into a system where you may not know what resources are out there. We want to be able to provide you with that information as soon as possible. So I have a whole team of people within the community that I work with to be able to provide these resources. Let's see. Next. So I've provided my non-emergent contact information. Like I said, I'm a paramedic. I'm the EMS division director here at Woodstock Fire and EMS department. That's my business line. You can also reach out by email. I'm available most times, and always happy to reach out and make a connection if perhaps we miss each other in passing. So feel free to reach out at any time if you have any questions, comments, concerns. I'm happy to share information that way as well. So thank you.
Thank you very much. We're thankful that you're so accessible in our community and doing all the work on falls prevention with some great team members in the community as well. Okay, so Bill is going to be our next presenter from Cover.
Thank you very much. I first just wanted to say thank you to the partners that we've had in the Woodstock community, and the Woodstock community in general has been very kind and very supportive of Cover Home Repair. It's a nonprofit organization based in White River Junction. I was the executive director until I retired in September. I still volunteer on home repair jobs with them, typically about once a month. And I've been involved in renovating and repairing older houses, typically, although I've done some new construction as well. I'm painfully aware how difficult it is, especially during the pandemic, to make any kind of physical alterations to your home. Before we go too far down the Cover path, I just wanted to reinforce a couple things other presenters have said. I am 70 years old and I am very aware of the fall risk for my age group and up. My wife is 75. I try to be proactive on this, and I have a rowing machine in my house, and I row about 2.5 miles every other day, and I ski 2 or 3 times a week. And to me, that's really been the best possible thing I could do to prevent falls. My balance is way better. My strength and endurance is excellent. And, you know, you can do all the modifications to your home you want, but if you're not active, a lot of those things are not as effective when you modify the home. Cover's mission is basically to provide help to people in the community through volunteer teams of people supervised by professional people very skilled in home repairs. In the Woodstock community, we're pretty well known in the Riverbend Mobile Home Park because we work primarily with low income homeowners, and the basic job of Cover is to try to keep homes safe, warm, and dry. And we think that if your home is healthy, you will be healthy. And we try to, you know, really focus on those aspects of the home that are safety related. We have a very specific protocol for going through a house to find where we think the greatest safety risks might be. Typically, it's grab bars. Typically, it's handrails. We obviously have done a lot with mobility enhancements at homes. We probably build more wheelchair ramps than probably anybody else in the state of Vermont. Probably do 15 to 20 per year. That's huge for getting people in and out. We had one homeowner 2 years ago that we built a ramp for her, but she requested it only after her home had burned down and she had to crawl out of the house during the fire and nearly lost her life in the process. So I mean, it's never a good idea if you're dependent on a walker or a wheelchair to put off getting an accessible way, a safe way in and out of your home. We also have a weatherization program, which I think is a real safety related item as well, because if you're not warm in your home and you start to get cold, you know, it's not a happy occasion. As we get older, for those of us who are north of 65, I mean, I know I have to keep my house a little warmer now than I did maybe 10, 15 years ago. I just don't generate as many BTUs as I used to. So anything you can do to weatherize your home against cold air drafts, you're gonna be more comfortable, you're gonna save money, you're gonna reduce your carbon footprints. There's all kinds of good reasons to do it. We bring in a small team of volunteers supervised by our staff, and we have some very sophisticated equipment to find those drafts and measure the cold air infiltration in your home. We're very good at saving you about 100 gallons of fuel per winter. The other aspect of Cover that's not as well known, but we've had people, I was in the store our store in Woodstock, in the White River Junction. I was there one day when an elderly couple came in from Riverbend and their stove had died on them and they hadn't had a hot meal in 3 days. And so we immediately got them one of our donated stoves, and our staff delivered it to their house and installed it for them. And we did that within 24 hours. And in the meantime, we loaned them a hot plate so they could at least heat up some cans of soup and stuff. So we've got a lot of ways in which we can help in an urgent situation like that. And just something to keep in mind. Let me talk a little bit about, I thought the AARP presentation was very sophisticated, covered all the bases, but the challenge we all face right now, I don't care what your income bracket is thanks to the pandemic, building material costs have more than doubled. Availability of material is not very good right now in certain areas. And it's just about impossible to get a contractor to do anything on your home. Eric Tobiasen from Woodstock's a very well-known local contractor who's been on our board of directors for years. He's not on at the moment, but people like Eric are booked out through the entire year. So getting somebody in your home is tricky right now. And you're going to have to think more about what can I do myself? What can I get help from my family on? How can I get friends to come in and help, or organizations like Cover or the Health Foundation? You just got to reach out in some different ways. So even if you've got the money to hire somebody, you may not be able to get somebody. And if you do get somebody who can do it, they may not be able to get the materials you need to do the job. So it's really challenging right now. And don't be discouraged. I mean, Cover's gotten very creative getting around all those problems. And I think, you've got enough partners here in Woodstock that you can certainly figure out solutions to almost any problem. But I would encourage you essentially not to wait. I don't think these problems are going to go away in a couple of weeks or a couple of months. I think they're going to be here for a while. So don't put this stuff off. Get organizations in there now to help planning stuff that you can do yourself in the next month, and start lining up people that you might have to hire to do it a year from now. But whatever you do, start now, don't wait. I'll hold for any further questions. There's a lot of information available on the Cover Home Repair website, some good videos, a lot of information for a do-it-yourself approach to some of the projects that we do on a regular basis. Thank you very much for the invitation today.
Thank you, Bill. I will have, before we switch to the next topic, just if you could share, I put the contact information on the slide from your website, but can you just very quickly let people know if they do want to reach out to you, what the process is, and is there a current wait? I think that's important for people to know too.
Sure, if you want to contact Cover, just go on the website. There are contact forms either to apply for help or to speak with anybody either by phone or by email. So just jump on the website. That's the simplest, easiest way to get to anybody you need at Cover. Bear in mind, it's a small staff. There's always a wait. They don't do emergency repairs. So if your toilet clogs up tomorrow and that's an emergency repair, Cover doesn't do emergency. They do urgent stuff. They do safety related stuff. They do stuff that non-licensed volunteers can do. So they don't do heating work. They don't do electrical work. And they don't do licensed plumbing work. We've got some retired people from those trades who still have their licenses, and on occasion, can do a small project. Sometimes we've had them involved in doing ADA bathroom modifications for someone who is using a wheelchair to get around in their home. Did I answer all your questions, Deanna?
You did. Thank you so much. We really appreciate Cover. And one of my first memories of interacting with Cover was helping someone in Bridgewater get a bathroom on the ground floor level, and it was so critical. But I even learned something just today about the Cover store. So thank you for sharing that piece as well. Our next and final presenter before we open up to everyone for our questions is going to be Beth. Let's see if I can find you and put you up on the screen. You have to unmute. There we go.
Okay. Hello, and thank you for the invite. I am Beth Robinson. I'm the grants coordinator at the Ottauquechee Health Foundation here in Woodstock. And we have grant funding for health and wellness grants, specifically in terms of tonight's workshop, the fall safety, risk of falling in safety. We do have grant funding for lifelines, which are, you actually set them up with a live person. They work with your existing phone system. They're really easy to install. And there's a medallion you wear around your neck, and they can get wet. So you can wear it in the shower, you can wear it around your home. And when you do set it up, you talk specifically, like I said, to a live person and let them know, how you would like things to happen once you hit that button and need their help, need their assistance in an emergency situation. And then the other thing that we're very proud of, and we call them our Aging in Place grants. And a nice way to have folks be able to stay home is to also have them stay safe. And so we do have grant funding for things like purchasing and installing perhaps ramps, entry ramps or ramps inside the home, handrails, things in the bathroom, making them more safe and accessible. And I can be reached. The information's there for other health and wellness grants as well. And it's an application process, and we work with really generous donors. So don't think, oh, someone else needs it more. If there's something you need in your home, you got a great idea from this workshop and you potentially need some grant funding, please don't hesitate to give me a call. And if I don't have an answer for you or the funding for you, I'll work to help you with those next steps. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you, Beth, so much. Everybody likes to know where there's help to pay for it. So that is the shortest part, but very important. Thank you. I am going to stop sharing so that we can see each other. And if anyone has any questions, we open the floor to ask anyone to unmute who would like to, and answer any questions. We do have the wonderful booklets in hard copy available from Linda at AARP, and the handouts that Linda Harvey and Stephanie mentioned, as well as some cover brochures too. Did anyone have any questions? All right. I think it's got to be some kind of a record to have that many presenters cover all of their content in 1 hour. So I'm so thankful to all of you for joining us. The recording will be available and shared when we have questions, which is such a great resource to us at the Thompson to be able to share this information. Thank you very much for joining us, and a special thanks to all of the presenters as well. Have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you.